Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Victorian Liberals have just expelled one woman and their ranks out of their ranks, and they've demoted another one. So their solution to the women's problem is to be humiliating and expelling women who have been strong enough to stand up for what they believe in and express conservative views. I mean, God forbid that should be allowed in this day and age. As our Sky News primetime host Peter Crellin put it in The Australian this week, there is no place inside the Parliamentary Liberal Party for forthright conservative women. Joining me now is Rachael Wong, the CEO of Women's Forum Australia. Rachael, Moira Deeming has been expelled now from the Liberal Party. They had two goes at it. They managed to do it this time. Essentially, this is all over her attending a women's rights march. Is this going to make more women scared to speak up? Is it going to make more women reluctant to put up their hand for pre-selection into the Liberal Party?
I think it will certainly have a chilling effect for some women, and understandably so, because they are basically being told that if you step out of line, if you stand up for what you believe in, you will be punished. That being said, I think they're equally so, and I think actually more so, there is a growing number of women who are getting sick and tired of being silenced, of having their rights and safety sacrificed to an ideology that seeks to erase them. And I think what's happened today is actually going to embolden those women to stand up and to push back.
Well, I do hope so, but this is depressing on so many fronts, because this was a real opportunity for the Victorian Liberals to take a stand here and not just represent their party and their base and stand by someone like Moira Deeming, but there's a lot of Labor women, because a lot of the women who attended that Let Women Speak march are left-leaning feminist women. So they would have had support from people they've never had support from, and yet they've gone down this road. It's extraordinary. Now, let's talk about a female MP who seems to be confused about what a woman is. In fact, she is the Minister for Women, Shannon Fentiman. She's in the Queensland Parliament. But as you've pointed out, she can't even identify what a woman is. Have a look at this.
To be inclusive, anyone that identifies as a woman is a woman. And as the Minister for Women, I take a really inclusive approach. And we want to govern for all Queenslanders, but all people who identify as a woman are part of our policies and strategies to advance gender equality, because gender equality is inclusive. You know, it's not one group advancing at the expense of another. Let's be inclusive and bring everyone with us.
I mean, this is just a little bit disturbing. How many more ministers for women or just female MPs are unable to define what a woman is, despite being one?
Look, firstly, Rita, I will say that the only thing that could possibly have outshone Shannon Fentiman's absurd inability to define a woman this week was the self-destruction of the Victorian Liberal Party. But in answer to your question, we already saw another woman today, and that was the Victorian Minister for Women, Natalie Hutchins, stand up in Parliament to say that as the Minister for Women, she proudly stands for all women, and that includes trans women, which we all know are biological men. So, you know, I think these so-called ministers for women, if they can't even define what a woman is, then they should not be representing women. If they are not able to stand up and defend the needs and rights of the women and girls that their portfolio is meant to be representing, then they should hand that portfolio over to someone else.
Well, and of course here we're talking about protecting women's only spaces. And in Victoria right now, I've spoken about it on this program, we have the absurd situation, the dangerous situation, if you ask me, of a predator, a sexual predator who now identifies as a woman despite having a penis, and he's housed in a women's prison here in Melbourne. So you've got the prisoners there who are starting petitions asking for this person to be removed from their facility. They feel vulnerable and no one's listening to them, not in the Victorian Liberals and not in Victorian Labor. Now, both of you and I, we're not scientists, but we understand biology. And so does this unhappy cyclist, Jacqueline Paul, who came third in a cycling race in Pennsylvania, losing out to a trans woman who came first. It follows as three-time Olympic women's cyclist Inga Thompson has called on women cyclists to protest any competition that has a biological male competing, such as the Tour of the Gila race. I'm not familiar with that one, which was won last week by, you guessed it, a trans woman, Austin Killips. These are real example of women's spaces being eroded. But where are the people speaking out against this? We've got Riley Gaines, we've got a couple of athletes, current and former, who are saying something, but so many of the high-profile female athletes, Rachel, are terrified to say anything because they know the activists are going to go after them.
That's right. And look, there's been an underwhelming response from the female athletes that Riley Gaines has reached out to on social media asking for their support in this matter. And no doubt it's because they're in fear of losing their jobs, in fear of, being vilified and cancelled. But the reality is we're not going to see enough movement on this issue until sports professionals actually stand up on this. And, the types of athletes that Riley Gaines reached out to are people like Ronda Rousey, who knows full well that how dangerous it is for men to be competing against women. She herself refused to compete against trans MMA fighter Fallon Fox. And Serena Williams was another one who, again, has also said that men's and women's tennis are completely different, and she would not want to compete against men because they would, beat her within, 5 minutes of playing. So these women who know full well, and I think they have a responsibility to their sports and to the female athletes that are going to come after them and who are not going to have the same fair playing field that they have managed to have themselves.
Well, the Venus and Serena Williams, the Williams sisters, know this all too well because quite a few years ago, when Venus was also a top 10 star, they played against a man who was, I think, ranked just outside 200 odd in tennis, and they both played a set against him. He'd spent the morning having some wine and cigarettes, and he beat them both comprehensively. I think it was like 6-love, 6-1 or something like that. So the gap between the men and women is enormous, and women are the losers when you pretend there are no differences. So good on Riley Gaines for calling out these top athletes and trying to get them involved in this debate. Rachael Wong, thank you so much for your time tonight. I always love talking to you.